Welcome to Curate Abundance, a show where we explore productivity hacks, self-development, and how to create a life filled with intentionality while optimizing for joy. I'm your host, Kelsey Styron, and in today's episode, we're talking all about burnout. So when it comes to burnout, we really have to start from the basics and understand what exactly burnout is, because this is a term that we hear often on social media. I know at least once a week I see something on Instagram or TikTok referencing burnout from somebody that I know works a corporate job, 8 to 5, and they're feeling stressed. But what exactly does burnout mean? And is that beyond the typical work stress that we see in our day-to-day lives? So burnout is defined as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress. It's more than just a feeling of being tired or overwhelmed. It's a feeling of being truly deeply depleted and mentally exhausted. So how do you know that you're experiencing burnout? Because some of us may feel this way sometimes, but how do we know that this is a deeper problem than just having like a bad day at work? For me, I've experienced burnout a couple times in my career, and I could really tell the difference because even a weekend wouldn't recharge me. It was something that I was deeply feeling, that not only was I physically tired, but I was so mentally exhausted. It's like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, and even a few days off of work wasn't going to solve that issue. One of the times that I can vividly recall being burnt out was one of my earlier jobs in my career. I ended up taking probably 5 months off of work, and it seriously took me that long to recharge because of how depleted I felt at the time. So how do you know if you're experiencing burnout? Apparently, there's some common signs to watch out for. One of the main ones is irritability or apathy. So pretty much being quick to getting angry or irritated about the littlest things, or just feeling totally apathetic where you have zero interest in anything, even your hobbies or the things that you love. You'll also probably find it very difficult to concentrate, and even the littlest tasks at work are probably going to feel like a mountain to you. It's incredibly hard to get motivated, and you just feel like you don't have interest in pretty much anything, even the things that you typically love. Another symptom of burnout is your quality of sleep. If you find yourself not sleeping very well night after night, or your sleep is just very disrupted, you find it difficult to get work off of your mind, you're probably dealing with symptoms of burnout. While burnout can affect men and women both, recent studies are showing that women are actually being affected at much higher rates, and this is most likely due to women juggling the responsibilities of both working full-time jobs while also maintaining household duties and caregiving duties. So if you realize that you're probably dealing with burnout right now, there's definitely some steps you can take to feel like your former self. Number one, you have to focus on self-care and start your path towards recovery. I know when I was experiencing burnout, I very obviously knew what it was from. I knew that I needed to get out of a toxic workplace and into a more healthy, productive space that really cultivated who I was and my contributions. I realize not everybody can always make that leap, so sometimes it is something that can take time, but there's definitely things you can do in the interim to make that time more bearable as you transition into something better. It's definitely okay to ask for support and take the time that you need to recharge. I know even just a few days off, if I'm able to swing that, can definitely help me. But again, sometimes burnout is more than that, and you know it's going to take more than a few days. It takes an entire shift in your environment. Mindfulness and meditation is something that definitely helps. And if you're like me and you're a very fidgety person who finds it hard to sit around, then exercise may be a good tool for you. I know I have adopted running, and it has helped me out so much, particularly when I've had a tough week at work. I really utilize running as my form of mindfulness and meditation because it just helps clear your mind out, and I can almost feel like a machine machine rather than a person in that moment. Sounds a little weird, but if you're a runner, you know exactly what I mean. Exercise also releases endorphins, which can definitely help us peak up our mood and just have a better rest of our day. It gives you more energy and just gives you something to look forward to. One thing I would highly recommend is just talking to somebody about the issues that you're experiencing. So if you're dealing with burnout, if you can talk to a therapist or even just journal it out, that helps me out so much. I highly recommend daily journaling to get those feelings out and just process them in a healthier way. Part of dealing with burnout may be realizing the environment that you're in is just too toxic and you need to make a change. So if that is the case, then I would say polish up your resume, open up that LinkedIn, and try to get away from that environment, because no position is worth you feeling that way. If you are feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally depleted, there is always something out there that's going to be better for you. I think we've all been in toxic work environments, and you will reach a breaking point at some point. So it's better to plan your departure as soon as you notice that. If you actually do like your job, but you feel like it's causing you burnout, there's some steps that you can take to minimize that. This is something I've personally struggled with, but I feel like I'm getting a lot better at it, and that is delegating things out. I think the people who suffer from burnout the most tend to be people who are people pleasers and perfectionists. They want to say yes to everybody and they want to get things done quickly, and they just want to exceed everybody's expectations. While that's such a great trait to have, you can also get taken advantage of, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Saying no to projects if you don't have the bandwidth for it, it is okay to say no, even though it doesn't always feel that way. We can definitely realize where our limits lie, and if we can vocalize that, we can work on setting better boundaries so we are preventing these issues from manifesting in the future. Do not forget your family, your friends, and your colleagues. It is so important to cultivate a self-support network so you can talk to people when you are feeling overwhelmed, because there's nothing worse than feeling alone. So while burnout isn't a medical diagnosis, even the Mayo Clinic has an article on burnout and how it can affect you and your life. Some of the main causes it lists for burnout is a lack of control in your job environment. So not having a say in your job or your schedule or your duties and roles, that can cause issues. A lack of clarity of what's expected of you is a huge one, and something I've definitely dealt with myself. If you're not sure what your boss or your colleagues expect from you, that can lead to so much confusion, and you're more likely to feel like you're not doing a very good job. Another thing it lists is having too much or too little to do. If you have too little to do, you're more likely to feel bored and feel like you don't have a purpose. And if you have too much to do, and I think we've probably all been there, you feel overwhelmed, stressed, you never get to take a minute for yourself, and that's no way to live either. And then lastly, if you have issues with work-life balance, that is huge. I highly recommend everybody to draw that line when you can, because there is nothing worse than when your work life starts seeping into your personal life. And that can be exactly something that leads you towards burnout, when you feel like not even your home is a safe space to get away from work. There is something I would like to mention in regards to rest. I feel like there's different types of rest. You have your passive rest, and then you have active rest. For me, I usually focus more on active rest. By active rest, I mean things like taking a walk, going for a run, taking a class in the gym, meeting up with friends or family, basically things that recharge you but are more active in nature. There's also going to be passive rest, which is something like getting some extra sleep or taking a bath, reading a book, just more of like staying in your house, getting comfy and cozy. These are both amazing tools to recover from burnout, but it's definitely important that you realize how much of each that you need. There have been times where I was feeling burnt out and I felt like I needed to prioritize that passive rest. So I was focusing on getting like a lot of sleep and just trying to lounge around my house and hang out in that way. But really, what I needed at the time was more active rest, which was just scheduling some time with my friends and family and getting to socialize in a non-work setting, and also doing other things that I love, like going for runs and playing tennis. You'll know which type of rest you need based on the person that you are, but just don't forget that there are more activities that may fill your cup more than just getting more sleep or more rest at home. Preventing burnout is a lot more manageable than recovering from burnout is. And that's because by the time that you realize that you are in fact burnt out, your body has been under severe stress for weeks, if not months already at that time. One way that burnout can manifest is through physical symptoms. Because burnout is a symptom of prolonged stress on your body, all of that extra cortisol can really do a number on you. It can lead to things like tension headaches, poor sleep, lack of appetite or overeating, general aches and pains, depression. The list goes on and on. Stress is terrible for us, so we definitely want to find ways to mitigate that stress and hopefully channel that into a healthy outlet. If you have a hobby, put a lot of that energy into that hobby. So whether that is exercise, reading, arts and crafts, whatever, just make some time for the things that you love, because we want to offload that stress in the healthiest way possible. If you have PTO, I would utilize that and make sure that you are prioritizing some recovery days. If you want to take a full day laying around on the couch watching Netflix, then go for it, as long as you know that's going to make you feel a little bit better. One thing I personally try to practice is daily acts of self-care. I used to really not take lunch breaks as often as I do now, but I realized that that extends outward to my colleagues, and I just don't want to be known as the person who's constantly eating at her desk. So I make it a point to actually leave the office for my lunch hour and actually go somewhere off-site. I take my lunch to a local park, and then after I eat, I get a full lap or even 2 laps sometimes around the park on the sidewalk. So that midday walk seriously helps me, because I have noticed just so much soreness in my body, and I can just tell that I'm not getting that exercise that I need throughout the day. And it really doesn't make sense to sit all day and then go to the gym in the evening, because that's still not completely mitigating the negative effects of sitting at the desk all day. So really, I'm trying to incorporate more movement throughout my day. And then that midday walk really increases my circulation. It boosts my mood. And some days when I'm lucky, I get some sunshine and the weather is nice. But I've even done it on colder, windier days, and it's fine. It's not perfect, but honestly, it's better than sitting in a dark office and not getting any movement whatsoever. One of the ways to prevent burnout is just really staying in tune with yourself and focusing on taking breaks at work. So once you have that in mind, definitely focus on incorporating more mind-body practices in your day-to-day. So something you can do is just rolling your shoulders to release that tension, and actually getting up from your desk and just walking around. I also try to take time every hour just to look away from my computer and just take a mini break. So even if it's something just like looking on Instagram or pacing around the office or just going and chatting with a colleague for a few minutes, taking this time to incorporate these small breaks has allowed me to view the workday in more bite-sized pieces rather than this long marathon. So, we definitely live in a time where hustle culture is super prominent. And this is something that I work really hard against because I naturally aim to be productive all the time. So, I have to tell myself it's okay to be unproductive. I really have fallen into that hustle culture energy before. And it's difficult because I love being productive. I love setting goals and I love reaching those goals. But sometimes I can do that to my own detriment. It is okay to take breaks if you need to, and it is okay to say no when you just do not have the bandwidth to do something. Get comfortable saying no to colleagues and don't feel like you have to jump at every single opportunity. If you're able to focus on one task at a time, that really helps mitigate those stressful feelings. Something I like to think of is that I can do one thing at 100%, and that thing is going to be amazing. But if I'm doing 100 things, they're going to be at 1% each, and they're all going to be shitty. You can't fully give your effort to 100 different things. It's just not possible. If people really want to see great results from your work, you should be comfortable telling them no when you truly can't take something else on. I realize it can be hard, especially if you're a woman. It can be hard to say no at work when you feel like you already have to go above and beyond to be given opportunities. But more often than not, people are going to respect you for being able to set your boundaries and voice your concerns over something. Lastly, one thing that we should do is explore our relationship to work. You may already be a high achiever who really sees a large part of your identity in your career and what you do. And while this can be a super great quality, it can also be to your own detriment. That's because more often than not, we're going to prioritize our career above many other aspects of our life, including our family, our friends, our health, and just our well-being. So next, I want you to write out on a piece of paper some of the key values that you have in your life. For many of us, this is going to be family, friends, our health, our quality of life, just anything like that. Write that out and explore your relationship between that and your job. And maybe ask yourself, why am I putting my work above my health? Why am I putting my job above my family? Remember that these things that you listed out on the paper are just as worthy of your time as your job is. And on that note, self-care is as well. So don't forget to take time for yourself and recognize if you're experiencing the symptoms of burnout. If you or someone you know has dealt with burnout, I would like to hear about your experience and hear about some of the things that have helped you out. I hope this episode was helpful for you guys, and I hope that you can incorporate some of these tips in your day-to-day life. Remember that we want to curate a life of joy and abundance, and it is so important to recognize the things that are not serving us and seeing how we can just incorporate more of the good in our lives. As always, thank you guys so much for watching or listening, and I will catch you in the next episode.